Just watch me now.
Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello and welcome back to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin for episode 21. I cannot believe we're at episode 21 already. All of these great guests in the Rolodex already, and today's episode is no exception. We are going to be speaking with Stacy Roest. Now, Stacy might not be a name that you instantly recognize from the NHL. He did play 4 seasons in the NHL with Detroit, 2 with Detroit and 2 with Minnesota, but he wasn't a big star. He wasn't a power play guy. He was a guy that kicked some butt in junior hockey. He had 3 consecutive 100-point seasons as a WHL player, and he played in the 90s, which was a big man era. And Stacy was a guy who was 5'9", 170 pounds in junior, putting up big numbers, and the 100-point season wasn't enough to get him drafted. So that tells you about the impact that the size had back in that era. So Stacy had to overcome that adversity, that black mark on the back of his hockey card, and he did. Detroit saw something in him and signed him as a free agent, brought him to Adirondack, where he played 3 seasons. He grew as a player, learned what his deficiencies were on the ice, grew his 200-foot game, and was able to make the Detroit Red Wings and play 4 solid years in the NHL. His story about doing that, how to make that happen, some of his decisions that he made as a junior to go back and play midget are amazing to listen to and to hear what some of the decisions his father made and how that worked out for him. And then we also talk about what he's doing now, which is being in a very influential position for the Tampa Bay Lightning as the assistant general manager for that organization, and also the GM of the Syracuse Crunch, and also the director of player development for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Stacy has been involved in getting prospects from junior to pro and on into the Lightning organization, and help being positive contributors for that team. The Tampa Bay has actually had a really great track record of doing that, and Stacy is one of the big reasons why they're so successful in turning their draft picks into NHL players. So we have an amazing guest that is covering hockey from a lot of angles. 1 as a player, 2 as a director of player development, 3 from the other side, from the GM side, and Stacy also has a son named Austin, who is an amazing hockey player in his own right, who is trying to follow in his dad's footsteps. So now Stacy is navigating that journey on a second generational aspect, and helping support his son do the things that he wants to do. So we have a lot of different angles here, a lot of layers to this onion. Stacy is an amazing guest. I'm really thankful that he gave his time to us today. And without further ado, we'll bring you the man who speaks about growth mindset as much, if not more than I do, Mr. Stacy Roest. All right, we are live with Up My Hockey here with Mr. Stacy Roest. Thanks so much for being here today with us, Stacy.
Thanks for having me, Pots.
Awesome, man. Been trying to set this up for a while, and it just sort of works out sometimes, right? Where you're not doing what you're normally doing, and time frees itself. So thanks for doing it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. A little bit different circumstances, and been home for a while, so
right.
nice to get together for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I want to get into you as a player, because I think your story is a cool one. You know, an undersized guy, prolific scorer in junior, getting passed over in the draft, and then ended up in the NHL at the greatest level, and your experience with the minors. And I just would like to get it through your eyes, kind of walk us through what that was like, because, you know, when I bring up your stats, and I love doing the
the digging on this stuff. This is some of the best stuff, and who you played with and where you played and all that kind of stuff. But you played as a 15 or as a 16-year-old in Medicine Hat, so you're obviously a guy that was a good player, correct? Like growing up through minor hockey.
You know what? I played what 10 playoff games my 16-year-old year. I think I always tell people this story. My 16-year-old year, I'd moved up as a 15-year-old to play underage midget. My 16-year-old year, I went to Medicine Hat training camp, had a good camp. My dad was there with me. Made the team, out of camp. We went into the office, and he basically told the GM of the Medicine Hat Tigers, no, he's coming back with me. So we went back. I played as a 16-year-old in major midget in the AAA Alberta League. So, and I tell people, I remember driving home with my dad, and I was so mad at him the whole way. We just we didn't even talk, and it was tough for me to get over that. I wanted to play in the Western League, but he said, no, they kept two other 16-year-olds. He says, trust me, this is the best thing for you. You're going to go back. So I went back there, had a good AAA midget season. And after the season was over, they called me up. I think I played 5 regular season games. And then actually the day before the playoffs, and now I'm 16, I'm in the lineup. I made the lineup the day before the playoffs. Kevin Real, our leading scorer, I think he had 72 goals that year, broke his leg. And it was, so we're one of the top ranked teams, and we're like, oh no, what's going to happen? So I stepped into the lineup, and I got to play some power play time. Ended up playing with Jason Krasovsky, who's a 20-year-old, and Calvin Nibbs, who's also a 20-year-old. Stepped right in and played quite a few minutes, and I think I ended up getting 5, maybe 12 games, 5 goals, 5 assists. So had a good playoffs, and I think I everybody develops at different levels and stages and stuff, and I think that literally gave me the chance. The other guys, the other two 16-year-olds that played weren't in the lineup, so it was a good lesson for me to slow down the development. It's not a race. It's not it's a marathon, not a sprint. My dad was smart that he said, basically said, son, you're not going to play as much as I want you to. You're going to play power play, penalty kill, first minute of the game, last minute of the game in midget. So it was nice to that it worked out that way, because then I stepped in the next year as a rookie in the league at 17. I played maybe second, third line and had some numbers, but that was Cree. It's not for everybody. A 16-year-old, if you can impact and play, it works for you. But that was key for me, for sure.
Wow, that's insane. So you went to that camp, it sounds like, under the impression that I want to make this team, and if you made the team, you had full expectations that you were going to be on the team. So I mean, you had to overcome that hurdle of making the team, and then you're going in the office and your dad says, nope, not today, let's turn around and go home. Like, that's crazy.
I think in exhibition I had 6 or 7 goals too. I had a good camp. It was good. And obviously he wasn't going to tell me that before. He wanted me to go there and make the team. And I played well, but he, it was a different back then. It was tough to communicate. It's like there was no internet. You're phoning. I was in Medicine Hat. We grew up in Lethbridge, so you're only an hour and a half away, so it wasn't that big a deal. But he just felt that I need to be around my family one more year, and it would have been interesting to see what if I would have went at 16. But I'm happy I didn't go. I looking back, everything worked out. Got to play at the highest level. So
right, no, good for you. That whole thing is interesting though too. Like, was Medicine Hat not? I mean, it was a little bit risky what your dad did there. That could have made some people mad. Letting it go that far and them assuming that you were on the team, and now they have to fill that spot with somebody else. Yeah.
Well, they were stacked. Like they had we knew that was his biggest thing is we had a strong team. He's looking at the team. What it's like when you're playing at camp. A lot of those guys, the big players, are in NHL camp, so you kind of get a false sense of where you fit in that team until everybody comes back from NHL camp, and now I was playing power play in preseason. And now you're sitting on the 4th line. Season starts. Maybe you're not in the lineup. So I think he had that. He was pretty old school. He liked the family to stay together. So it worked out.
No, that's amazing. And you talked about it already, but that 10 points in 12 games coming in is a really nice welcome to the WHL as a 16-year-old. At the playoffs when it really gets going, and then stepped right in and had a really great rookie season. And what was that like as far as that was your draft year then too, 92, correct?
Yeah, that was my first draft year. Yeah.
So you walk into you're playing your draft year now in the WHL. You're almost a point a game. 20 goals. Were you, I mean, I guess hoping would be the wrong word. Of course you were hoping. Were you expecting to get drafted? Do you think that was good enough, or how is things looking then?
Well, I knew that there was because of the 10 points the year before the playoffs. I had a strong playoffs. We lost to Lethbridge Hurricanes. Actually, we went to, I believe they lost to Spokane in the final. So we had a strong team. Had a good playoff run with the year before as a 16-year-old. So I think people kind of started looking and same thing. It's tough to unless you're at that game back then. You weren't seeing any of the players. It's not like you're WHL TV or on the internet and you can surf and see what it was word of mouth and you had to watch it yourself. So I think there was some interest there. I had a decent year. Obviously you want to get drafted. You think okay, as a 17-year-old, it's pretty rookie season, pretty good stats, but unfortunately my name didn't get called on draft day.
Right. And how was that from a mental side? Like, did it do anything for you? Did it get a chip in your shoulder? Was it motivation? Did it really not matter? Or like, how did that work for you?
That first year wasn't that bad, I think, because you're upset and you see your buddies get drafted, you're happy for them, but they're good players. And, obviously that was back then when the league was big, the NHL was big, and I've been 5'9" since I've been 15 years old, so that hasn't changed. So I think that was, but you understand, I had an advisor that kind of ran me through things and told me, chances are the next year was probably a lot harder when you put up 100 points and now you're looking saying, got to be some interest. You're looking at other guys that got drafted the year before, didn't have as good years as you. So then, so now you start getting a little bit upset.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. So you were eligible again, and then you essentially become a free agent, right? So I mean, you're eligible for the draft 2 years in a row. I think that's how it works, right? And so if you got passed over that second year, again, you mentioned it, 106 points, and another good playoff series. So I mean, you perform well in the playoffs. You think you do what I'm sure you felt like you did what you could do there, and then you get passed over in the draft again. What was the message then? Like, what was the knock? Did you hear anything? Like, was it just your size? Was that what it was? That no one wanted to touch it?
Size, and I wasn't the best player in my own end pods. That was probably one of the big things. Defensively, it was tough to defend as a young or smaller. I was a stronger, thicker kid. 180, 185 pounds back then, so I was strong enough. But just the defending and the scouts, I'm sure they're watching you, and you can't defend 19, 20-year-olds and junior. It's going to be tough to project that guy. My parents were, my dad was about around 6 feet. My mom wasn't the tallest. They're looking at how much is he going to grow, so that was a big concern. And then maybe I'm not going to lie, the work ethic too. I relied a lot on my talent and my skill. And then later on in my career, I learned that, it starts with the work, and that's where, when people come to watch you play, that's what they look for first and foremost, is how much effort is the guy giving, and what's he doing to help the team win.
Right. Interesting. Well, I'm glad you're so candid with that, because I mean, it's definitely easier looking back, right, on what we could or couldn't have done. I'm sure in the moment you felt like you were doing a lot of good things, and should have got recognized, especially when you see your peers, getting that recognition. And at this point in your hockey kind of career or pursuit of hockey, did you still have your eyes on, like, I'm going to be a pro, or was it like I wanted to go to university, or like what was your mindset there after that 17-year-old year, 100 points and not getting drafted?
No, I still had you still want to be a pro. Before I even went to the Western League, I had some schools and Michigan State, some schools talking to you, sending all this stuff, wanting you to come on visits and all that. And I decided I wasn't really, wasn't a big, I wanted to play hockey. That's it. From day one, when I first went, I told my parents I was going to play in the National Hockey League. And I think that, it was always about that. Okay, 17, it didn't work. 18 didn't work. Now you gotta really grind, and you gotta work, and you gotta look around, and first thing, you gotta look in the mirror and what can I do better? What can I, how can I, up my game to get to the next level? Obviously it's not working. All these NHL teams are watching you. They're not really giving you a sniff. They're talking to you, interviewing you a little bit, but there's no contracts. There's no, training, not till my 19-year-old year training camp or anything.
So you go on, and I wrote down some of the guys you played with there. It's crazy. I mean, the hockey world, is a lot smaller than we realize sometimes. Like a lot of guys I played with, you were there, Brian McCabe, David Cooper, Ozzy. I didn't realize that's where you played with Ozzy to start off.
Oh, yeah.
With Scott Townsend, Rob Niedermeyer, Justin Hawking, Josh Green was a roommate of mine in pro down in Nashua, New Hampshire. And so a lot of guys there, and a lot of guys that went on to play in the NHL too, and so you're witnessing this. And the one year, I mean, the 120 point year that you had your last year there as a 20, or no, I guess that was your 19-year-old year. You were, I mean, the second place guy I wrote down had 64 points or something. The year you had 115. Like you were the Medicine Hat Tigers by all counts and measures. So I mean, you did what you could do in junior, correct?
Yeah, that was a good year. We had a strong team. I think I had 48 goals that year, I believe, and it was it was a lot of fun. Like you said, the team we played on was a lot of good players. We that was tough too, because even after that year, I got invited to the Pittsburgh Penguins training camp, and I went to that camp as my 20-year-old year, and that was the first sign where coming out of that camp, they wanted to sign me, but that was a lockout. So there's a lockout. They're saying they want to sign me, but I'm going to start in the it was the NHL, IHL, and then there was the East Coast League. I didn't want to go to the East Coast League. I figured, well, I'll go back as a 20-year-old, let the NHL figure out what's going on, and then we can, hopefully have a good year and then go from there. And that's what happened. Went back as a 20-year-old and had another solid year. And then, Detroit offered me, and it was an AHL contract, AHL East Coast League contract, two-way contract. And Kenny Holland was at the time living in the Hat scouting there. So he gave me my first contract.
That's wild. So was it an NHL deal Pittsburgh was offering you, but they wanted you to start in the coast?
It was an AHL deal.
An AHL
it was
deal.
A good deal. It was good. It was good. They said, and then once the season got going, they told me they'd sign me to an NHL contract, but I didn't really feel comfortable, because if that didn't happen, maybe I struggled down there, injury or something. Now you can't go back to junior, and you still don't have your NHL contract.
Good for you though, man. Like that's pretty brave and wise at the same time, for a guy that's wanting to get recognized, and you do get recognized, get to go to that first camp. Someone's actually going to give you a contract to play hockey and get paid money to do it. And you're like, nah, I think I'm going to just wait.
That was good advice from my agent. As soon as they put that piece of paper in front of you, where do I sign? But so right. It was good. We got my parents and I talked, and then my agent, Rolly Thompson, and I had a couple good, heart to hearts, because it had to happen pretty quick, because, junior season was starting. So we had to figure things out, and they wanted to cut their roster down. So it was, really good decision, good advice.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about, I didn't realize your first camp was Pittsburgh. I assume Mario was there.
Yeah. Dominic Pittis was, for the Lethbridge. I remember Lethbridge Hurricanes, Dominic Pittis, Jagger, Brasso. It was a good, Ulf Samuelson. It was a Ron Francis.
Holy smokes! So you walked. That's your first camp, right? That's the first one you said you got invited to. So your first camp, NHL camp, is with all these Hall of Famers, essentially. What do you remember from that experience?
Well, it was great. I think that's the first year that Naslund come over too, and he was there, and he was the big first rounder. I think he was. Yeah, it was a great camp. It was right in the dome there. Played a couple practices in a little mini round robin tournament. Had a final. The winning team got to go out for dinner at this fancy restaurant. We were actually on the winning team, so it was pretty cool. It was a great experience. Ronnie Francis was one of our centermen. Brasso was our goalie. Alfie Samuelson was a defenseman. So it was, you go there the first couple ice times, you're just looking at all these players, and you forget about what you're supposed to be doing.
I could totally relate to that. I mean, Mario Lemieux was my guy, like my god growing up, essentially, right? I could imagine if that was the first place that I got to experience what maybe being an NHL player would be like, and yet I have to deal with having my idol on the ice there with me and getting caught watching him, I'm sure. Did you ever have that issue? Like you ended up in the NHL and, a little later on than some guys kind of make it, which allows you to grow some maturity. But I know when I was, in and out of that opportunity of the NHL, I was still young enough, I felt, and not maybe mature enough from the side of it to feel like this is where I'm supposed to be, as opposed to, like having Matt Sundin in my room growing up, and now I'm on his line. Like that just didn't. There's something about that didn't seem to make sense. Did you ever have a hard time kind of getting over that fact?
Yeah, you know what, Mike? Because I spent 3 years in Adirondack. Detroit's farm team. They had a good team. They did a good job. Surrounding us young guys with good, solid vets. We were competitive every year, and Detroit was stacked back then. Like you looked up, nobody really got called up unless there was injuries, and even if you went up, you didn't play much. You come back down. I never got a sniff. Never got a game until so 3 years went by. And in my last year in the American League, I had 92 points. So I had a good year. And then, of course, now you need waivers. And back then, I went to camp every year, tried to make the team. They send you down. So now you need waivers. Well, now I go to Detroit's camp, and same thing. They just won the cup. Now you go to camp. You're looking around, but they're stacked again. But Kenny's working the roster, working the lineup. They trade Mike Knuble. I get a spot on the opening night roster. Once again, you look at the lineup. Where are you going to play? I'll never forget this, Scott. And I was like that. It was, where am I going to fit in? How am I going to play here? I'm a young guy. First I didn't play many. I sat out quite a few games to start the season. And Scotty Bowman called me in and basically said, like, I love your work ethic. You made the team. You had a great camp. I think I had 4 or 5 goals in training camps. So in preseason, had a good preseason. And he said, right now, this we're playing well. We're winning. We have a veteran lineup. You keep working. You keep doing your thing. And when your opportunity comes, you'll be ready. And that's what happened. There was an injury here and here and there. And then once the season starts and then I got into, I believe it was 59 games that first season. So it was a good rookie year.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, let's backtrack just a bit. You mean that's stepping into a team that's just won the cup. That's ridiculous. But you're in. I love you talked about kind of that Red Wing system. You mean I've spoken about it before, and I've definitely asked a lot of questions about it. And it really seemed like they had something good going on there, like how that farm team was connected. Not so much like because there was a lot of traffic up and down, but you felt a part of that organization. Anyone I've talked to felt like they were a part of things, from camp all the way down. And you played 3 years there in the minors. How did that get you ready for your time in the NHL? Like, what do you think you were learning down there?
Well, like I said, I think you looked at our goaltending was solid. Our defense, we had a couple of veteran defensemen with a bunch of prospects, 4 prospects, maybe 2 veterans. Every forward line had a veteran guy on it, so it allowed you. You need some size, some toughness to protect your young guys, and it was good. And the good thing was you always had management coming in and out. You're in Glens Falls, New York. The GMs coming in, the assistant GMs coming in, the scouts are coming in, so they're showing that you're watching. I think that's really key for prospects. You want to know one you're getting good opportunity, good ice time. If you can't play and you're not able to produce and play out there, it's tough. But also you have to know that the management's watching, so that when you're playing well or you're struggling or whatever, they're there to seeing it. Because same thing back then, you're not just flipping on AHL TV to watch your minor league team. You got to physically travel there, which was hard.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I can relate to that. I felt that was one of the downsides. Although I loved playing in St. John's, Newfoundland, like the people were amazing. Everything was good. Like I was successful there from a player standpoint. No one saw you.
Yeah.
Like they were rarely ever there. And it was so far away that it was like such a hard call up that, it was a really hard place to get into Toronto too. So like, that would definitely lift your spirits. Everyone's in the minors is usually there because they don't want to be there, right? They're playing to get somewhere else. And to know that, Ken Holland's coming in, the assistant GM's coming in, these guys are watching, at least you feel like you're a part of the system.
Absolutely. That's the thing too. Detroit has always done a good job of making sure their prospects are ready. And if a guy comes over from overseas or from the CHL and he's a star and he's able to play, at your top 9 and he's getting regular ice time, yeah, go for it. If not, they did a good job of taking their time with their prospects, making them. It's tough to rewind development. I always like to say it's tough to rewind that, because once they go to the league and they struggle and it's too much for them, it's tough to get that you get that confidence. It's not something you go to the store and buy. It's hard to get and hard to keep, especially in the best league in the world.
Yeah, and one of the things which I notice is you're the guy on the team. Like you're captain in Medicine Hat. You're getting all these points. You end up being that in Adirondack as well. 92 points in the AHL is hard to do. Like it's a hard league to score in. So to do that is a testament to you. And then but at the same breath, so you're getting better, like from an offensive standpoint, but is that really what is getting you to the NHL at that point? Like, how are you working on yourself as a player to try and become an NHL player?
Well, I think that's over my 3 years there. I think they did a good job too. I always played power play. I was always more of an offensive guy, but then they started, letting me kill penalties and taking more faceoffs. And if you're winning more faceoffs, you're going to be out there later in the game and stuff. So that's how I kind of, like I said earlier in junior, my defensive game. I'll be the first one to admit it wasn't good. I never got in minor hockey. I wasn't. It was about scoring goals and going north. Not taking care of your own end. So they made that a priority. And then if they break it down for you. You're looking up. You're not going up to replace Yzerman, Fedorov, Larionov. You're going to have to battle it out for the fourth line, and maybe third line, and basically go out there and if you get an opportunity to play with those guys, great. But if not, just make sure the puck's not going in your net, because that's what I learned when you got to the NHL. If you're on the ice and the puck went in your net, it was tough to get back out there.
Well, 100%. And I think the lesson is what I'm fishing for is like that. Everyone's so worried about that aspect, right? Like their numbers, and of course, like you even mentioned yourself, at a certain age, you're just going out there and you're having fun and you're going to be the best player on the ice probably, and you're going to score some points, which is great. But like the fact is that everybody that's coming up has been that guy in their team for the most part. Right. Yeah. And then there's less and less spots available for those guys. So at some point you need to develop those aspects of your game that's going to allow you to get at least into the lineup, to get the opportunity to play maybe in those other spots. Is that sort of what you felt like you needed to do, or what they told you had to do?
Yeah, exactly. As you're going through in the minors, you wish that, back in junior, you were kind of held more accountable, and maybe, or even in minor hockey, if you turn pucks over a little bit late in the game when it's close, or if you're up by a goal, that's where you learn that. And that's where, like back checking a little bit harder, staying on the right side of the puck and all that. Those are all little habits that you learn at a young age, that if you're held accountable and you carry those up. A lot of kids in junior hockey, they play, maybe not on the best team, but they play the right way. They get drafted, maybe not, someone from a different team who has the same amount of points goes in the second round. This kid gets drafted in the fourth or fifth, but he plays the right way. Now we bring him to our organization or some other organization. He starts playing with good players and he takes off. It's all about the habits and playing the right way, in which, we go to the minors, and all of our prospects that are in the minors that don't spend much time there. It's not like they go there and they score 3 goals a game. They go there, they play the right way. Now we need a reliable player in Tampa. Now you go to Tampa, you play with good players, and off you go. And you start scoring a little bit more. Maybe even some kids even score, I should call them kids. Some players score more in the NHL, than the AHL, because it's a little more organized, and you, like I said, you're playing with the top players in the world. It makes it a little easier.
Yeah, no, for sure. What do you said that maybe your work ethic quite wasn't what it should have been in junior. I remember we worked out a little bit in the summers. I don't remember what year that was, or even where I was or where you were at, but I remember you being a committed guy. Like I remember that about you. Was there some point where you kind of started to get it more, or you started to put more time in on that type of stuff? Or was there a leader, an example, or was it just kind of you maturing as a player and a person?
Well, I realized when even my first year in Medicine Hat, it's like you have your breakfast club or whatever. Back then, there wasn't really many, workouts or gyms. It was more you showed up to make sure you're out of bed. You went and did some community service and stuff. Nowadays, these kids and these players are in the gym and doing some extra stuff, which would have been great for me. Then I went to the minors. Even then, there's a lot of travel, a lot of games. You know what it's like. And then it's day off here, day off there. By my third year, I'd figured out, okay, I got to get in a little better shape. I got to be stronger. And I've been to a couple camps now. I go up there, I'm getting bumped around a little bit. And then actually after my third year in Adirondack, we lost out in the playoffs, and I went to got called up as a black ace, went to Detroit, and they're going on another run. And I stayed there for the first 3 rounds, and we went home in the finals because everybody was healthy. And it was unreal watching Steve Yzerman. It was crazy. After practice, he's on the bike. This is playoffs. He's in playoffs. Him and Chris Draper, they're on the bike. They're the next day off. They're in the gym, just tweaking, just doing maybe a little bit of maintenance here and there. And I thought, holy cow! I remember they sent me home, and usually you take some time off. I remember driving right home, drove all the way from Michigan to Lethbridge, Alberta, and I went right to the gym. And that was my turning point, I guess. I came to camp the next year. I was in unreal shape. My body fat was down, and from that point on, it was a big part of my summer. I really looked forward to it. I loved it, enjoyed it, and I tried to not let anybody outwork me. So that was my big thing.
That's awesome, and it's amazing. Like time and time again, when I have these conversations, it's that perspective, right? Of like seeing what else is out there and is available, and what other guys are doing. Because your perspective is only your perspective, right? And there's not many guys that are like get to junior or get anywhere in the game that don't feel that they're hard workers. I don't think there's many guys that say, "Oh, I'm pretty lazy." Like you think you're going pretty hard, right? You mean like you're committed and you're doing these things. But unless you see somebody else, right, in a position where you're like, oh my God, okay, so that is what some guys do. Well, I guess I can do that too, right? And now it gives you that idea that, hey, maybe there's another level for Stacy or for Jason or whoever the player is. And Brian McCabe was just saying that his was Gary Roberts and Matt Sundin. He was like, I couldn't believe these guys. He'd been in the NHL for 7 years and thought he kind of had it figured out. And he's like, once I was exposed to that, it was just so powerful for him to reach another level in his game.
Absolutely. And then in an example like Detroit, like a team like there, like when the best player in the team and the captain's doing it, he's looking around the room and you're not doing it. You're over there pretty quick. It was amazing how they all bought in but yeah, you're right. You, as a young kid, you think, even in practice, you're working hard, and but you can always go harder. You can always be pushed and it's like the old drill at the end of practice when your coach blows and you do a hard lap and some kids are got the arms flying, the other kids are trying to catch the guy in front of you, and it's little things like that push each other and yeah, that's the key. That's the
what
key.
Is the what was the you made that team out of camp then? So you're saying in 98, 99 for your first NHL game, you made the Red Wings out of camp.
Yeah. They had, like I said, they had a little bit of roster issues because, like I need waivers, and I found this out later that at the time you don't know if you're going to go through waivers and stuff, but then you think back, like at that point I'm just focused on making the team. I had a good year. Other teams probably would have played me. So Detroit, moved. Remember when we traded Mike Kinnear to Boston, which opened up a spot for me, and that was it. That was my break.
That's awesome. So what was that? What were the feelings? I mean, obviously you're excited. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, usually most guys are like their first game is, a call up or something just to get their feet wet. You're not making the team out of camp unless you're like an 18, 19-year-old kind of kid generally, right? So that must have been super wild. Just walk me through how you found out, or I mean, who told you that you made the team?
Well, to start the year, I was still in a hotel. So then, and Kenny was there, and Kenny Holland was there, and he told me, like, you had a good camp. I'm going to keep you around. I'm in the hotel. And then right before the season started, it was pretty cool because after practice, Darren McCarty comes to my hotel, knocks on the door and says, all right, let's go. He said, what do you mean? Where am I going? I thought maybe he was taking me to the airport, getting sent down. But he took me in. I lived at his house for a month with him and his wife and his young son. And it was awesome. It was fantastic. That made it so much easier. Now you're a part of it. He gave me one of his cars. Now I can, what it's like. You're in a hotel. You're not, you're doing well. You're playing, but it's still not the same. Once I went there, it was good, settled in. And after that month there, Kenny told me to get a place and look for a house. So went and got a condo. And so it was pretty cool. That was awesome. Good feeling.
That is super cool. So what that season then, were you mostly then we talked about, were you kind of a fourth line, third line center? Is that what role you're playing, or what type of, what were the minutes like?
Well, that was, it took me a while to get in. I sat out, like I said, that they were all healthy at the beginning of the year. It took me a while to get in the lineup. And then that was actually, I played wing. I hadn't played much wing. And that's one thing I regretted as a youngster. I played a lot of center and didn't play as much, I wish maybe my coaches would have mixed me around a little bit more, left wing, right wing. So now I'm going to the NHL and you're getting to play with, you're not taking, like I said before, Draper's your fourth line center. You got Larionov, you got Fedorov, and you got Yzerman. I'm pretty sure that I'm moving one of those guys to the wing for me. So I go in there and it was a little bit tough, to get used to playing a lot of the wing, but it was, played left wing, played right wing. The odd time if somebody was banged up, I get to play in the middle. But so it was good. So like I said, as a youngster, it would have been a little bit better for me, I think, if I would have been moved around a little bit more in every position. Good lesson for a lot of the young kids out there to, then when you get to any training camp, you got, instead of 4 spots open to try out for, there's 12. You can be any position, right?
Yeah, I know that's adaptability is a huge thing. Versatility is huge for sure. Uh, any stories from that team? Like you mentioned, how many Hall of Famers did you mention there already? Like being able to be in a locker room with some of those guys. It's your first tour of the league. You're around these guys that everyone in the hockey world knows and is idolized. I mean, what are some of the takeaways from that first season?
Well, we only had a couple of rookies on the team that year, so it was they've been there together for a while, and they had lots of success, and they won cups. And the one thing I did remember is that, like, you went on the road with these guys, you never paid for a meal. Like, they were fantastic with, they've been in the league for a while. Not that that's you had you're getting good money, you had your per diem, that was all set, but it was amazing how you always went out with different guys. Everybody always went out together, and they took care of the young guys, and that you could tell that was a tradition, that started years ago. That, and as you moved up and as you got older, new guys came in, they really took care of you. So it was a great team to really learn how to be a pro. Was that
did you feel anything different, like so you ended up going to, maybe we'll talk about how you got to Minnesota, but I've talked a little bit about my experience at training camp in Detroit, because right at the end I'd gone to Japan. I'd done overseas. I kind of found my fire again and was like, you know what, I think I can play in the league, and I want to have an opportunity to try and do that. And Detroit gave me a chance there with Kenny and Mike Babcock, and I went to that training camp at Traverse City, and it was like no other training camp that I'd been to. It was the 5th team that I had been a part of, on the NHL level for that, and the people that were there at that camp, like the Holmstroms and the Lidstroms and the Hassicks and the Franzens, and like all these guys were just really amazing people. And like, I just felt so damn comfortable there in a good way, like that I belonged and that I could like participate and I could be a part of this thing. I really regret getting hurt there early, because I was just like, it was the first time where I felt like, yeah, man, these guys take care of each other, and like they want you to feel comfortable because they want you to succeed. Did you feel that? Like, did you even know that was to be felt? Because like when you step into an organization, it's your first one, you might not even know that that's not how it is in a lot of places.
Oh yeah, exactly. You're you obviously start from when I was there. Kenny was the GM, so Kenny is he's an outgoing guy. He likes to hang around those people, and that's where you draft. Like, character is a huge thing. If you're bringing in good people into your organization, it's contagious, and it carries over and it trickles down right from your training, your training staff, all the way to your medical staff, to every one of your players, to your front office, to your secretary. Like, it's contagious, and I think they did a great job of that. Like you said, you go in there, whatever you needed, whether you were the top player or the first call up, they treated you very fair. Whether if you need treatment or equipment, it was always first class, and that was fun to be a part of.
Yeah, and the way the older guys treated the young guys, like, I mean, that business is a business. I mean, a lot of times you're getting chased out potentially by the guy coming up from the minors, if you're an older guy, and guys protect their jobs because of that. But there was just a feeling there. Well, not even a feeling. I witnessed it. Like a guy like you said, Draper. Like Draper's teaching Helm how to do face-offs. I mean, Helm's going to take his job probably, but like he's going out of his way to make this kid feel comfortable, make him feel better, and there was a lot of that was going on there. And I mean, now you're in a GM position and you're a part of a successful team in Tampa. Like, is there any lessons from that? Like, how do you teach guys to do that? Is it a character thing early on? Are you looking for those intangibles of the type of people like you mentioned already, or how do you do it?
Yeah, I think the draft is tough. The draft is tough because you don't get to see. You talk to their junior coaches, you talk to their billets, you talk to their friends, and everybody's got good things to say about all these players. And the character is key, like you said. Drafting characters. Because now you draft them, you got a couple of years before you sign them, and obviously if you draft them, you're hoping that you sign them because you've made that commitment to them. You don't get many. You get 7 picks a year. If you trade a couple, or maybe you can obtain a couple, but now you're with the salary cap, you have to the draft is key, and your development is key. The high character is critical for growth mindset, for like you said, being around good people. You want your training staff to want to be around that player. You want your coaching staff to be invested in that player. And if if they're good, hardworking, high character kids, that's a big couple of big boxes for us.
Right. But then, yeah, I mean, so that's the draft. I mean, but if I'm talking about the veteran guys, I mean, that starts in the draft, I guess, is that's what you're saying. I mean, you bring in the right people and those people become cornerstones of your organization. They bring those character traits up into a 10-year veteran who now knows the value of taking care of somebody younger than them. But I mean, that's a long process in that scenario, you know. I guess, you mean, that there is no secret sauce. And I guess, I mean, to ask you that, it wouldn't be fair because everyone's trying to do it. I mean, everyone's trying to find that scenario. But when you got it, I mean, it was such a tangible feeling being there, like seeing what success was like. And now talking Detroit, like what those guys treated each other like, how inclusive it was. Like I said, it was very different. And yet we're all playing in the same league. I mean, I was part of the Islanders and the Kings and the Maple Leafs and, these other organizations that weren't as successful. And it felt like I was actually playing in a different place in Detroit, the way they had it dialed in there.
Yeah, like you said though, that's why it's so key. You need your core group to, and now we're going to get some of our young guys are going to come up and take the jobs of some of our older, maybe higher priced, players. Like I said, the salary cap's a huge thing you have to manage, and you need those character guys to step in, and they can't be high maintenance or not in it for the team, or don't know their role or whatever. So that's key for us, is that character. And then as they get older, more mature, now they become more part of the the leadership group, and then they carry the younger ones that are coming through. So that all starts with the draft. You have to make sure you have all those boxes checked.
Are you we'll get into the draft a little bit. I do want to get back to you though, and then when you left Detroit, and remind me to get back there because I want to know what that experience was like in Minnesota, and then also going overseas. But when you're asking these questions, and it comes up time and time again, the importance of the intangibles, the character aspect, the leadership, the ability to be a self-starter, right? To not have your hand held. All these things are super important when you're trying to identify. But how do you really get that information? Because most guys will talk a pretty good game. Like you said, like people are generally going to go to bat for guys. What is how do you go about doing it in your opinion?
Well, I mean, you got to talk to as many people as you can, but I'm a big believer, like, you got to watch as many games as you can. You go to the game, you find out a lot about that right there. You watch, one, how the coach is interacting with him. Two, how he's being used as a coach. Does he have trust in him? Is he working hard? Body language is huge. If you're in the let's say major junior hockey, and you're playing in front of full rinks, and a guy misses you with a pass, and you're gonna show him up and give him the hands in the air or a bad call or something. That's a big sign for me. If you see those and there's no issues with work ethic, no issues with body language, being good to his teammates and stuff, that's, to me, because once that game's on the line in the heat of the battle, that's when the true, you see the true colors of the player. You've been there. You're last minute, couple minutes left in the game, something doesn't go your way. How are you going to react? You're gonna grind it out, or you're gonna show the body language and start the true colors start showing out.
Right. No, it's super interesting. And I, two questions come up with that. Like, one is, people do mature emotionally at different rates. I think we can all agree that we weren't the same player at 18 than we maybe were at 28, that there's some growing to do. So I think there would have to be some acknowledgement of that, I guess, when you're looking at a guy. Is this guy just, will he ever be, or is this just now? I guess you have to answer that question. And then I guess my second part of that question is, how far would that, I suppose you can't put a number on it, but like, let's say this guy's like projected to go, maybe he's got 30th overall talent, but you're seeing some of the stuff you're talking about, right? Like, and now it's like, geez, like, do you take him in the 5th round, or you do not touch him at all? Or like, how does that, how do you place that in the whole pecking order?
Well, that's a tough one. You have to look, the pros and the cons, but then again, it goes back to, we believe in Tampa. We have our organization in the minors. We have good, solid veterans that are there, and if we bring this player in, maybe a little bit, some character questions or whatever, we're confident that with that group there, if hey, this is how we do it. This is how our staff works. This is how our players work. This is this is the protocol for being a lightning player, and we're confident. Hey, we can get this kid to jump on board. And obviously, if it's way, if it's so many issues that it's always tough. But like you said, people mature. They because that's the big thing too. In junior, you go from being the top dog to now you go. Hopefully, you make Tampa or Detroit or whatever team. Now you go to the minors, and now I always say that's where they kind of first meet their match, because now you go there and now holy, there's a lot of good players here. We're all trying to get to the NHL. Maybe I thought I was here, but I'm actually not first line. I'm third line. I got to work my way up, and now you'll see their grind game and see their growth mindset, and that's a huge thing for us. If you want to, with all the resources and player development stuff, the growth mindset is the biggest factor in that.
Well, I mean, yeah, you said that word 3 times now, and I kind of let you get away with it without even talking about it. But it's, I mean, it's beyond kind of a buzzword now. It's like reality, and I don't think, it's we're both referencing the work of Carol Dweck and her book Mindset, that she did these studies to identify the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and how much more beneficial it is to have the belief that you can always get better, and the belief that you can improve, and how that manifests itself into not only player development but also the human aspect of things. And with you, when you speaking about that, I mean, you sound kind of like me, because I do believe, like, the thing with character is, like, I approach that from a growth mindset now, which I never did before. I kind of thought guys were who they were, but you give the guys the right inputs, and you give them the right ability, and you give them the right support, like, people can change, right? But they have to believe they can change. You talking like that in the position that you're in Tampa now, is that a philosophy that Tampa Bay has kind of embraced to become a growth mindset organization?
Yeah, because that's also tough too, because like I said before, it's 16 years old, you go to the junior and you're playing and you're successful. 17-year-old, you're getting better, you get more success, you get drafted. 18-year-old, you sign. Right? Where's your, that's also tough. Okay, we want you to have growth mindset, and you got to get better, and you got to improve your game, you got to work on this, but they really haven't had to. I mean, they're working on their game, but they haven't really failed yet. Now you come, so that's also a tough one until you get them, into that situation, whether it's in Tampa or in the American League, or in the NHL or the American League. It's hard to find that stuff out. It's hard to find that out until they meet their match. Like I always said, the AHL, they meet their match. That's as that's not an easy league. As I said before, a lot of the players actually do better maybe in the NHL than the AHL, because now they get there and maybe it's not going as well as they thought. All right, now what are we going to do to we're like I said, whatever you need, we've got our sports psych, we've got our skills coach, skating coaches, video coaches, you name it. Now it's up, we'll help them along, but it's up to them to dig in, and we'll give them whatever they want. Like I always say to the players, I can't do it for you. I wish I could, because it would mean I'm still playing. And I wish I would have known this, obviously, like I'm sure you've thought about it 100 times. I wish I knew all this when I was still playing, because it would have made me a better player. But that growth mindset.
No, man, it's crazy, because when I mean, I'm starting to study this with what I do too, and I'm a big believer in it. But like, as far as from an organizational standpoint, to really embrace that from the top down, of like what that means to have a growth mindset as a culture, I think it would be challenging when I've thought of it before. Okay, now how would I introduce this into an NHL format, right? Because the NHL is a results-based place. I mean, it is at the end of the day, right? You need to win. Yet the growth mindset is about, learning from your mistakes and embracing the challenges and getting back up when you fall and when you fail, and allowing that to happen, right? That process. So I assume that there is a bit of a challenge. I mean, the AHL is a developmental league. You're allowed to fail there a little bit more than you are in the NHL. It's the whole idea of why you have young guys there, and I'm sure that's an easier one. How is the approach with the young guys when you bring them up? Is there an organizational philosophy to that? Is it rest on the coach, like how he wants to handle the mistakes, how he wants to deal with that, or what is the philosophy when it comes to that?
Well, I obviously, like you said, it's young guys coming up to the NHL. It's a winning league. Like you want to, because coaches, they're not just good guys up there. If they don't win and they don't produce, it's tough for them to keep their jobs, right? Yeah. GM is the same way. So it's, I mean, we've had some good teams for a number of years now. When our young guys come up, like I said before, you get to play with good players, and we've got a lot of our players now that have been the minors that are playing in, in Tampa. So it's, when they come up, they might get a little bit of a, longer leash, I guess, if you do make a mistake, or to get used to the league a little bit. But there's a fine line there, because as a kid, the reason why you got called up is because you're playing this game. Now you go up there and you change your game, and you're not playing the way you were before you got called up. Well, now you're not, now you're maybe getting sent down, somebody else is getting called up. So that's why I said before, it's a tough league. You got to make sure they're ready before they get up there, because once they go up and it's not successful, it's tough to rewind that.
Right. Yeah. No. Interesting. Because I mean, you've alluded to that a couple of times, and even yourself on a personal level, to your dad having the wiseness there to pull you back and get you into more situations. Where there's some people though that would say, you know what, like if you can be around the best, I mean, just be seen, be noticed, show up. I mean, do what you can, and kind of take that philosophy that you should be there if you can, right? Take that opportunity and run with it. Do you think that changes as far as like when you were, for instance, in your scenario there, when you end up making the NHL and you're not in the lineup for X amount of games in a row, would you have said to yourself, "Oh, send me back down to the minors where I can get some ice time and play," or was that the right path for you at that point?
Well, but that's a little bit different just because of the waivers. That's the other thing. Like I did go down there and played. It was funny. I hadn't played for a while, so Kenny says, "We're going to go down and play in Adirondack for 2 games. You're going to play Friday, Saturday, come back Sunday. Perfect. Here's your plane ticket." So you're worried you're not coming back, but then, like I said, a little bit different in national hockey because of the waivers, and if they want to send you down, then somebody else gets a chance. Now they lose you. So I go down there. I never forget. So I hadn't played in a while. You're working hard in practice, but you know what that's like. You're not in game shape. So I go down there and I said, to the coach, I said, "I haven't played in a while. I'm gonna try, like, I've been skating hard, been working hard." Well, the first period, he must have played me 10 minutes. By the second period, I'm cramping up. I got a game. I'm already thinking I got to play again tomorrow night. I think I had a goal, maybe 1 assist in 2 games, so it wasn't great. But by the end of the third period of the first game, I knew I was already in trouble for the second game. So Kenny, I get sent back. He says, "How was it? How was it?" He said, did you do anything? How was it? I said, "Well, it was okay." I said, "But Kenny, I'm done. I'm done." I said, I must have played 30-some minutes in both games after sitting here for a month. So that was good. At least you got down there to play, but it's a little bit different. But if a player doesn't need waivers and he's not going to produce at the NHL or get ice time at the NHL, you have to use the minors. They have to play. That's like at any level. It's like if a kid's in midget and he's on the AAA midget team, but he's not playing, maybe it's better for him to go to the AA team and play. That was my story a little bit with, like I said, in Medicine Hat. As a 16-year-old, my dad saw it coming. When all those players came back from NHL camps, he knew I wasn't going to be on the power play. I probably wasn't going to be playing late in the game. As a 16-year-old, you got 4, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, good team. I go down, played all year, and then the big telltale sign was when I came back and I had passed those 2 16-year-olds that had stayed. You'd think by them being around those bigger, better, more experienced players, they might have. But at the end of the day, you got to play. You got to play, and that's the same thing. Like I said, you have your young players in the NHL. If they're not playing, that's tough. If you can get them to minors, that's how you get better.
Yeah, I agree. So what happened with Minnesota? How did you end up in Minnesota?
Well, after my second year in Detroit, had actually played 3 playoff games. And down the stretch, I'd actually been playing on the line with Steve Yzerman and Pat Verbeek, and we were having a good end of the season. Then when playoffs started, we had, of course, when you look at the lineup in that team, we were loaded. So I found myself sitting out. Then I played actually 1 game against LA, and then we won that. Then we played Colorado, and I played 2 games in that series. Later in the series, once again back with Yzerman and Verbeek. So I thought, I had a pretty decent season. Went on a stacked team. It was down to between me and a couple of guys. You have to protected list. Kenny called me, I think it was maybe a week before the expansion draft, and said, "Listen, we're not going to protect you. You're going to be exposed in the expansion draft." So then then you start talking to the teams, and they start making your calls. Your agent talks. So I knew I was going to get picked up in expansion. I actually thought it was going to be Columbus. I thought I was going to go to Columbus. I talked to them more, and then Minnesota actually ended up taking me with the first forward pick in the draft. They had the first pick, so they took me as the first forward.
Really?
Going there, yeah, it was kind of cool. I found this out later. It was kind of cool, but the problem was I think, I had 2 years in the NHL, but I really hadn't played all that much. And going to Minnesota, I remember my first training camp. We just picked Marian Gaborik. My first scrimmage, I'm out there with Marian Gaborik, and I'm sitting there going, "This is awesome. It's great." But part of me is going, "Uh-oh," because if they want me to play with this kid, he was unreal how fast and skilled he was. But I really hadn't played that much. I was third, fourth line guy, no special teams, and maybe lost a little bit of my game from not playing that much. So it was really tough the first year to be able to. I knew I could do it. I knew I could play better. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and then later in the year I started to really play better, which they brought me back for another year. And then that second year I had a really good start to the season. The first week I think I was second all-star or second star of the league and stuff. But had a really good start, couple goals early, had some confidence, and then same thing. It just started to play a little bit less. Lost the confidence, and I could never really get back on track. So it was a tough. I love Minnesota. The fans were unreal. We finally got hockey back. The rink was at that time was the best in the league. It was unreal. The energy in the XL Energy Center was just fantastic, and I love the organization. The owners, everybody was awesome. It was I always say I wish I would have played better. I wish I would have not put as much pressure on myself and just went on and played your game. I think when things didn't go my way, I started pressing a little bit, and I just couldn't really get it going the right way.
Hello there, just a quick interruption to the conversation, which I hope you are enjoying. If you are enjoying this, if you are a frequent listener, as you know, in most of my episodes, I ask for your support. If you are a coach, share it with your team. If you are a parent, share it with your athlete. If you are a fan, share it amongst your buddies. If you are in a fan club, share it with them. This stuff, I truly believe, can make a difference for some players. To hear other people's journeys, hear other people's stories, and what has worked and what hasn't worked for them, and to really understand that there is a person behind the athlete. So that's what makes this podcast different, and I'm going about this in a completely organic way. I'm just producing the content and hoping that people enjoy it, consume it, and share it. That's what it's about. So please be a reason of marketing for me, and share what you enjoy here with others, and we'll continue to grow this, and I'll keep trying to produce stuff that is relevant and meaningful to the listeners out there. So thank you so much for your support. Now back to the conversation.
How was your relationship with Jacques there, Lemaire? Did you enjoy playing for him, or what was that like?
I mean, people always say I played for Scotty Bowman, and then Jacques Lemaire. Jacques great. He's a systems guy. Like, people always said about the trap and stuff. Like we had that thing mastered, and we beat a lot of teams that year. We were in a lot of close games, and without Jacques there, I mean, that was back when there was no salary cap, so we're all younger guys that we're kind of new to the league. We had a couple of veteran guys that they picked up in expansion, but we actually did pretty well the first couple of years because of the coaching of him. But
Right.
Jacques was good to me, but it was a little bit, I was more of an offensive guy, and it was a lot of defense in that team.
So were you hoping then, like you said, you didn't really have that opportunity in Detroit? I mean, you had an opportunity to play. I mean, like not a ton, but towards the end of that last year, you started getting some bigger minutes playing with Yzerman, obviously, and maybe stepping into that role that you were hoping for, maybe, right? Kind of all along. And then you go to Minnesota, and now you're with Gaborik, and maybe I'm going to be a top 6 guy here, right? Like, and maybe I'm going to be a guy that's, going to be able to produce. Is that what they wanted? And you feel like you didn't, like, is that what you mean? Like, you feel you wish you would have played better? You wish you would have stepped into that opportunity? Or was that really the opportunity they were giving you?
Well, I think, once again, you're in the lineup in Detroit, you're playing with really good players. You're the maybe the youngest, weakest, player on your line. And it was so you go there and it's easier to play. Now you go to Minnesota, and you're getting the opportunity now, but I'm not sure if I was quite, I don't know if I was ready for it, or if like I said, once it didn't, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and once it really didn't go, numbers wise, and you start dropping down the lineup, then you're healthy scratch, and now you really got to battle, to get back in the lineup and find your spot, and it was a tough, tough first year there to really, confidence wise, and just, like fitting in.
Right. And then I see the 58 games in the second year. Was that when you were starting to get healthy scratched, or were you hurt that year? Or what did the games played there mean?
Yeah, I got some the healthy scratch there, and they it was quite a stretch there. And then same thing, late in the year, I picked it up again. I started playing more, and got into a bit of a groove. But it was, and then after that, I signed one more year back in Detroit after that one.
And that's when you went to then you had Grand Rapids. Oh, and you had two games in Detroit. Okay, so that deal was done. Detroit signs you back again. You have a really good year again in the AHL. Was that disappointing to not make that team out of camp?
I knew it. I talked now I was getting, what was I, 28, and I knew that, Detroit was a good team again, and plus they, their veteran guy. Now they wanted me to be that veteran guy. Maybe a pretty good year, really good playoffs that year for Grand Rapids. We had a really good team. We actually lost in Game 7 in the semifinals to Houston, who eventually won it. So that was disappointing, but we had it was a good year. I love that year because I got to play a lot. It's back to, if I would have had that year and then went to Minnesota, it would have been a different story. Because now I played, now I'm getting more power, now I'm penalty kill. Now I was actually taking all the face-offs and all that, and now your confidence is high. Now you're ready to go, but it's like I said, it's tough to rewind it.
Well, not only is your belief there in yourself, right? Because you've earned it, because you've been doing it. So there's less self-doubt, but you also, your tools are better, right? Because like you said, you've been using them. I can totally relate to that. Towards the end of my career, I felt that I actually got worse as things went on, because like you stop doing the same things and you stop working on stuff. Like we talked about that growth mindset, right? Like you get so trapped in being a professional sometimes, and like what that means as far as, the travel and all this stuff around how many games you're playing, that you kind of forget about getting better or improving. It's about systems and it's about these other things. And that approach, and I can totally relate to you, like being in different scenarios, all of a sudden you're killing penalties. To just go back out there on a power play, you still have the same hands as you did, or you should, the same capabilities, but it doesn't quite feel the same, right?
No, exactly. Like I said, I think during the year you lose your skill. That's why you're looking forward now. Like during the season, we have, if you watch a team, NHL team, AHL team struggling, I can guarantee, they're a good team struggling. I can pretty much guarantee it's because they haven't practiced. They get in a little stretch. We go on a road trip. You come home. You give them a day off. You play a game. The next day, maybe a pregame skate, and then play another game. Oh, now we need another day off. Now we got a travel day. There's really no time to practice. It's like any minor hockey team. If you just go out and play a bunch of games and don't practice, well, how are you getting better? So now you have to get the puck and you get a stick handle. If you're not shooting in practice, because in a game you get 4 or 5 shots. If you're a third, fourth line guy or a bottom pair defenseman, you're not touching the puck. So now you finally get that puck. You haven't touched it in a couple of days, literally.
Yeah.
And now it's and the guys are coming at you, and so it's
it's tough.
That's for sure. You lose your skill. You gotta keep it up.
So then you made the jump then after that year. Obviously, I mean, by choice. Did you just feel that, what, I want to? You sort of put the NHL in the rearview mirror and said, what, I want to continue this career. Was that the mindset, or what, when you hopped over there and ended up going to Switzerland?
I went over the year before the lockout because I had a good year in the minors, and Detroit wanted to sign me back. They offered me a very fair contract. I was really happy. They were loved my time in Grand Rapids. Same thing, fantastic organization, and we loved the city there. It was great. Got called up. They promised me, okay, you come back next year, you'll get a good opportunity to make the team out of camp. But I wanted to go over there. The next year was a lockout coming up, and I knew that all the NHL players were going to go over there. So I figured, because I went over there, I signed a 2-year contract in Switzerland. So I had that year. I wanted to go over there for that year in the lockout, and I was thinking about coming back. The only problem was that first year I had a really good year. The second year I injured my hip. I got hit from behind, and I had to have hip surgery. So I couldn't. So now I had hip surgery in the off season, but I can't get healthy enough to come back for training camp. So I signed an extension and a 3-year contract. to Switzerland thinking, okay, well, one more year, but now now you're over 30, and it was tougher. But no, it was to go over there a little bit early before the lockout was just you make sure I love Switzerland. It's probably one of the best European leagues over there, and the country's fantastic. But that's why. And then once I got the injury, I knew that it was probably play over here as long as I can and enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you were, a great player there by all accounts. I mean, looking at your at the stat line, and it's a well-paying league too. I'm sure you got paid well there. They treat guys really well there, and it's an awesome place to play hockey. The only problem is it is not the NHL. It's somewhere else. So I kind of had a similar scenario there when I went over. I went over quite early to Germany, and it was more or less. I was like, I thought I was just going to be reinventing myself, kind of, right? I just needed to, almost like we talked about, right? Like get back to what it felt I was as a player and kind of feel like get out from under the spotlight and have a good season, get some hands back and then come back. Right. And that was my idea. But then, geez, I had so much fun and was so successful. And then the way they do the contracts there, they're offering you a longer deal, like 3 months into the season.
Oh, yeah.
And now all of a sudden you have to make a decision, right? Like, is this where I want to be? And, for me, I signed the 2-year extension 2 months into my first 1-year contract. And, and that was kind of what I did. Right. And in doing that was like essentially saying, well, okay, like the NHL thing is, I'm letting that go, but, it is hockey's a beautiful thing, though. It takes us a lot of places, and there's a lot of amazing places to play that aren't the NHL. That guys have great careers and form great lives. And you mentioned being in Switzerland there. I've never heard guys not have the experiences there are really, really awesome. What with what you do now? So like let's talk about your time with the Lightning. You started with Detroit? Did you not when you first got into post-retirement, not being a player?
No, I was actually when I came back, I started as a part-time area scout out here in Vernon, just going around and watching some amateur games, just a little bit here and there, and then that January, I'm obviously very fortunate with Tampa, Steve Eisman, played with him. We were good friends, kept in touch when I went over to Europe and still remain good friends. But then in January, they needed a player, needed a player development guy because our Steve Thomas, who was doing that job, went up to, when the season started in Tampa, he went up and was an assistant coach with John Cooper. So now we're looking for a new one. So then in January, that's when I started that director of player development.
Awesome. So Steve was the one that gave you that role, or bestowed that on you. So how did that conversation go? Like, obviously to be, one, you had to know him for sure, right? To get that. You mentioned that being a teammate of his, you knew what you were about and what you were like. Did you know you could do that role well? Like, I just find that interesting, right? Okay, now go do this, right? Like, without really knowing that you're going to be good at it potentially, right? Like, and what that's all about. How did that conversation work?
Well, yeah, I was. He says you want to be the director, player development. I said, well, like, what do I do? He's like, well, you just go around the players, and So then I didn't really. I talked to a lot of our scouts who I hadn't really even met yet. So I'm calling them and saying, okay, I got hired to do this job, and who's our prospects and what's he like and what are they like, and then it was basically just figure it out for yourself. Okay, well, I'm going to watch these guys. Here's my list of players that I have. I didn't go to Europe that year. College players, you can go there and watch them, but you say hi to them, but then you got to be careful a little bit with the eligibility, and they have their coaches, and you can't. Juniors. So I grabbed my stuff and I went on the ice with them. It was great. And the coach called the coach, hey, you mind if I bring my stuff? And they gave me a tracksuit and a pair of skates, and off I went. And it was great. The coaches loved it because, now there's a guy from the NHL teams out here practicing with us, and they let you run a couple drills. And after practice, you take your prospect aside and work on, the stuff he needs to, okay, these are the areas we got to touch, and this is what we're strong at, and this is what we need to work at, and go over video with them. So it was, I loved it. It was great. It was a good, and I was still young. I was still fresh out of playing. I wasn't even 40 yet. And it was, kept me back on the ice. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of travel, but it was a lot of fun.
No, that's cool. What, from your day one in the job there and like going your first year, like what did you learn over the tenure of you doing that you grew into, or that you started to kind of master or change?
Well, I think that, that back to that growth mindset, like this is now now you're on the ice with these kids, and now we drafted them, but now we're getting to know these kids. Now you start learning what these kids are really like. When you start critiquing a little bit and going over what, maybe we could have did this differently, and watching plays and effort and see how they react to you, calling them out a little bit and stuff like that. But I think the big thing is just like any player, just communication is key for all these prospects. If it's you go there and you watch them play and it's not their greatest game, okay, well you sit down with them, you communicate with them, you really you're fair to them, you're fair to them, but you're honest with them, and you're always in communication with them. They really appreciate that.
Right. Do you find that who told you to do that though? Because I think in our generation that wasn't happening, right? The communication. Well, it sounds like maybe your story is a little bit different than mine. It sounds like they were somewhat, Detroit there was pretty good with telling you about stuff. But, I think the human aspect I called of hockey has come a long way. I think, like dealing with the person as well as the player. Is that something that just came kind of naturally to you, or do you just think that was the best way to get the most out of these guys?
Well, I honestly, I think I learned it through my son. Like he's now, okay, I'm traveling now. I'm helping out coach a little bit, and you're talking to him. He missed his weekend games and stuff. And then, hey dad, the coach, he pulled me off the ice, or you're coaching and kids are upset, and you're switching the lines up a little bit, or doing whatever. And Johnny missed the shift, and you got to tell him why. What's the learning? Okay, this is what we're doing. This is our game plan. This is why we're, they have to understand it. Once they understand it, once they know the game plan, they're okay with it. I think that's the big thing too, is like in Detroit, it was great communication. Even in Minnesota, like that's the NHL, right? Now you're in the CHL or in college, in communication is key. He can take me off the power play, but what can I do better to why, and what can I do better, to work on it, and how are you going to help me? Is the coach coming over with me and showing me, what I could do better to get me back on the power play, or is he just taking me off the power play?
Right. So you're saying, talking about Austin, your son there, like, so you learned kind of indirectly from him what he would struggle with, and then you'd understand, like, when he would struggle is when something would happen and he wouldn't understand why it happened. Is that kind of what you're saying? So now you're saying, okay, well, now I'm going to tell these guys, like what is going on, and so they're more accountable or more aware.
Yeah, yeah, or if you don't make it clear for the, you make it. The coach tells a player one thing, and right away, if the player doesn't like it, does he want to go to his parents or go to bed that night, thinking about the truth, or does he spin it off into his own kind of his own thing? So I think just that communication and honesty of this is what. This is how we're going to do this, and this is how we're going to do this together is key. And I think at the end of the day, the parents or the players, they that's the only way they appreciate it.
Right. Do you find, I would assume, now you're not in that role now, but when you were doing it and you were working with these guys as your day-to-day job, right? Making these guys better, you come across all different types, like even though we're working within this hockey environment, and there is kind of a stereotypical hockey player, I mean, there's still the bandwidth of like personalities is wide, right? And I think one thing that's evolved is that the message has changed. We all had the coaches that would just deliver it one way, and you had to figure it out for how it worked for you in your own way. But do you find that being part of the skill of that to get the most out of guys, as to how do you find out who ticks, or how to motivate somebody a certain way?
100%. That's you go to one prospect here. You got to treat him. You got to teach him or learn or this is how we deal with this situation. And next city you go to, it's totally different. That's key. As you said, coaching minor hockey is the same way. Back in the day, this was it. Like the old school coaches was, these are the rules. This is how it's going to be run. And now it's a little bit different. You got to, and that's, I think the best coaches are the ones that can. Or player development coaches or GMs are the ones that obviously figure that out on how to deal. You got to have your habits and you got to have your rules, but there are different. You have to approach different players differently.
Yeah, well, I mean, the carrot and the stick a lot of the time too, right? I mean, there's guys that respond to the old school kind of get her going. There's other guys that don't handle that quite as well and want to be motivated a different way. And I guess that's more or less where my head goes with that. I know I know as a coach of like even minor hockey teams, like your standards and expectations got to be pretty consistent, right? And they got to be adhered to. But like how you get that extra 10% out of the guys, which is what you guys are trying to do, is how do we extract as much of their potential as we can in this scenario? Like you can't just say it's a carte blanche scenario, right? That this is how we're handling everybody, because it's not going to work for everybody.
Exactly.
What do you guys with player development now? I mean, we talked a little about this off air, but I mean, it's salary cap. There's only so much money you can spend. You don't want to be making mistakes, and it's almost pivotal, vital that you have people coming up within your organization that you've drafted to fill some spots because they're cheap. I mean, let's be honest, and then they end up being players for you. Without those players, like it's tough to be competitive. How does that, I mean, first of all, do you agree with that? I mean, I shouldn't presuppose that you agree with that, but do you agree with that? And if so, like, how has player development changed in the last while since you've been involved in it?
Well, I 100% I agree with it. You have to have your, because you're not getting, the organizations have their players. They're good players. They're young players. They come up. They get their 3-year entry level salaries. Like you said, they're cheaper for the salary cap. You're not getting those players because the good ones, the next contract, they keep them. Off you go. So you have to have you get 7 picks a year. You have to, drafting is one thing. We've talked about this before. Drafting is one thing. Now you got to develop them. You can't just say, okay, here's my 7 picks. Here's 2 years in a row. There we go. Now they're coming into Syracuse, our AHL team, and in a couple of years we'll look at them and see if they're ready. Now it's about development. It's it's the sports psych, it's the power skating, it's the skills coach, it's the it's everything all together. Because like you said, we have to have some of these players playing for us. Because then you have your Stamkoses, your Kucherovs, your Vasilevskis, they're your superstars. You have to have these young players coming up to because free agency, July 1 when that free agency, those days are. You're not getting any bargains on those days.
No, 100%.
You're not going there to fix your cap issues.
Right. What is there like a successful draft would give you what, 2 players, maybe 3?
Well, we've had 2. Yeah, I mean, I think the averages show maybe 2, but we've had some really good drafts where we've had all 6 or 7 play, and then you've had some other drafts where you haven't had. You had maybe 1 or some still haven't played yet, right? Like a successful draft, probably 2 or 3 is good. Your first rounders are obviously critical. Like, that's your, there's no secrets in the draft, as you know. Everybody gets to watch the same amount of games. You scout the games. You go to wherever you want to go, whatever your organization believes in, and now you get your pick. You're picking 31 or the top 20, 30 kids. You got to make sure you hit that one. And then from there, like you said, the problem is you're drafting 17-year-old players. By the time they're 19 turning pro, they might have grown 4 inches, put on 20 pounds, or like we said, change their growth mindset now. They've changed their character a little bit. They're working a little harder. They figured it out. They matured. That's when you get your 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounders coming. That's why we have a lot of 7th rounders that we pick that work out for us is good character, hardworking people that mature later. They develop later.
Do you find that to be the biggest differentiator? Like, so you're putting these guys into a pot essentially, right? And like you're trying to support them all the same. You want, I would say you want equal success from the human aspect, but I mean, you've already said like your first rounder is a critical piece of that. So they're probably going to get a little bit more attention, a little bit more, opportunity, those guys. But I mean, if someone's excelling and performing, they're going to get an opportunity. What do you see now with all your time and experience in that developmental side of like, is there like an equation? Like, can you almost foresee now, like who's going to get better and who's going to have the chance?
After you draft them, you've worked with them for a bit, right away. Like, that's the nice thing. I've been doing it for a while now, and I still I oversee the player development, work with a bunch of great people on our staff, and still go around and travel and get to meet them, take them out for dinner, and talk to them. And development camp in the summertime is huge for us. Now we make it fun. We have a 3-on-3 tournament, but you give them some challenging skills drills or skating drills and see how they react, and that's the key. Now you start. Now that 1 year in, 2 year in, you can figure out who's going to go to Syracuse and really, really perform, and who's going to go there and be, like, oh boy, this is going to be tough. So it's like I said before, like the ones that figure it out and they're smart and they work and they have that mentality, they're usually not there for long.
Right. So are those the intangibles right there that you're saying? Like when you say figure it out, like what is that for a young guy listening right now? Like if he wants to be a guy that's been able to figure it out, like what does that mean to him?
Well, like I said, you go to that league. It's not a, say you go to the American League and you get there and you know you're a good player because we signed you. So now you're a prospect for us. Now we're putting you with our other best prospects and players. Now you have to go there. Now you got to get better. You got to get better. We have our resources, like I said, our skating. Jump in, do the extra. You can't do something. Keep working with it. The ones that are fail falling forward, we call it as well. Are you going to fail falling? You're going both feet in. You're going for it, or are you going to kind of tiptoe in a little bit and see how the water is? And we want the ones that are ready to go for it. If you don't, some guys don't want to look bad doing it, right? I'm not going to try 100% because then if I fail, then I've really failed. I think that's the big one. You can see those kids go there, and Anthony Cirelli was one of the best. He went to, he was a walk-on in Oshawa. The year he won the Memorial Cup, scored the overtime winning goal. I think it might have been against Kelowna in the finals. And he came to, the next year went back to junior. We drafted him 2 years of junior. Came to Syracuse, didn't even make it a year, and he wasn't a huge scorer in junior. Didn't even make it a year because he did everything right, got better every day. He had that growth mindset. Everything he did was full out. And it was, you could tell right away, as soon as he got there and the season started, we're talking to the coaching staff and in Syracuse, you go, oh, better enjoy this guy while he's here because he's not going to be here long. So it's fun to watch players like that. Not a first round, high round pick, but you can see he had what it took for sure.
That is so awesome. And that's just such a, boy, it'd be nice to have a documentary for a season and just being able to capture kind of what that essence is, right? That you now as somebody who helps, make decisions on where guys go and get brought up, that one, it's noticeable, like you can see it, like it's tangible, like these behavior aspects, right? Like the way to handle your day and the way to way you look at yourself. It's not a quiz. It's not a test that you can answer, right? Like, I mean, it's in actions like you can watch. And lo and behold, if you actually have the right actions, you're going to get better and your game's going to improve. And, now you got both things going for you. It doesn't seem that hard, but it's harder than we give it credit sometimes, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. And you make a good point there too, especially when you go to you come out of junior, now you go, how are you going to react to living, what it's like. Now you got a roommate, now you're living on your own. Now you're going through all this stuff. Now I've met my match and now I got, I got to pay rent. I got to do all this stuff. How they reacting to that too. Some players, you don't even notice a difference. Other players, you can see it's really affecting them, like all this responsibility now. And that's the maturity. And that's the, it's all the little intangibles that for sure make up the player on the ice before he even gets to the rink.
Yeah. There's a focus there too. And I find in the minors, because you have who you guys, meaning you guys as management, puts in that room is important, like the example and the leadership and who you have in there and what they're doing. But there's also that element of like trying to fit in with the guys, try and be a guy that has friends, that is respected amongst your peer groups. Yet you already said about it, like, but not, some guys are worried about trying too hard because you don't want to isolate yourself and ostracize yourself as being the try hard, but it's really necessary to almost like somehow to embrace that, right? That this is what I'm about. This is what I'm going to do, and screw it. Everyone thinks, even if they are my teammates, because I mean, I talk to guys about that now because what everyone's doing isn't what you should be doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. Like, yeah, some players they come in, they don't want to, you can see there, it takes them a little while to settle in because they don't want to, step on the veterans. I'm not going to outwork him in practice. I'm not going to, try and take his call out spot and all that. It takes them a little while to settle in. And you can generally see that as management, as a coaching staff. You can, obviously you're on the team all the time. You see that happening and you see that, like, okay, we got to address this. And then a lot of the times before that player can really, perform, like I said, it's getting them comfortable before they get to the rink that makes them, comfortable around their teammates, comfortable at home. And now they can come to the rink and perform the way, we know they can.
Yeah. And you say fail forward. I want to touch on that too, because I think, you're kind of making that, a bit of a metaphor, but I think it applies on the ice and off the ice, correct? Like that's a growth mindset thing, but you get that opportunity, whatever it is, whether you're getting your call up or whether you're in overtime, like there's there's some guys that'll be like, oh, I don't want to make the mistake, right? And by thinking that, they end up making the mistake, right? Because they're trying to play safe. Or you have the guy that wants to be the difference maker, and so be it, man. If I make the mistake moving forward, that's an advantage, and that's kind of, is that almost an organizational tenet that you guys are trying to embrace that both on and off the ice?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think but once again, that's a lot of the the character, right? Like you gotta, and some of the players have never not failed. Everybody's failed, but they've always had success. They've always had success, and now you're struggling a little bit, and you're not things aren't going the way they normally do. It's about, all right, I'm gonna grit my teeth here, and I'm gonna go for it instead of just kind of, I don't want to fail. I want to show that I'm trying my best, because if I fail, then it's I'm going to look bad. But no, that's for sure. That we want players that you're gonna go for it. You're gonna you make a mistake, obviously, at least we know. We played with guys. The guys that sometimes that the player that works hard every practice, every game, and he makes the odd a mistake here and there. The coach, he might overlook that guy and let him get a free pass, because what, he always works hard. He shows up every game, but and if he makes that mistake, I know it's it's an honest, good, hardworking mistake compared to, the other guy that half the time he's there, he doesn't do any extra. That's the
little shorter rope for that guy. Do you wear? Do you find? Do you switch hats? Meaning from dad of Austin, the young hockey player, an accomplished hockey player, potentially going to play in the WHL next year, to being what you do with developing other people's kids, because you touch on adversity, and I'll just have a little more leeway there, if you allow me. Like, adversity is such an important thing, I think, and it sounds like, you embracing the growth mindset, it's a very important thing, I'm sure, in your philosophy of allowing these kids, whether they are our kids or whether they're drafted kids that are under your kind of tutelage, to allow them to fail and allow them to try and get back up and figure that out. Is that different as a parent? Is it harder to do as a parent, or is it, how is that for you in that setting?
I think I've gotten a lot better at it. Let's say that. I think now I'm what, you have a coach, you have a team, I'm the dad. You want to talk about something. My biggest, I always say work hard, have fun. And if he doesn't work hard, that's one thing. I love watching them play. I love watching all those kids play, but you can tell when they work hard. If they work hard, they go out there and it doesn't go their way, you're good with it. I think earlier on, you're out of playing, you're still in the game, you're coaching too much. Like you're even with, because I was helping out when I first retired and stuff like that. But once the game's over, the practice, you work hard in practice, you give them stuff, the whole team or your son, something to practice on, and then that's it. It's I think I learned that over the years, that less is more, of just, hey, be the parent, especially now, because I'm not a coach. I'm just I go away and I come watch on the weekends and watch him play, and he's got a coach, and he can listen to his coach, not me.
Right. Well, I think that's a challenge, though. I think there's a challenge from both sides. One being a guy that obviously, you're getting paid by an NHL team to develop these guys. You obviously know a thing or two about hockey. Now you're watching somebody else be in charge of your son's development, and I'm sure it's easy to be critical at times if you wanted to be. So allowing the space there for that coach to do his thing, and also allowing the interaction with the player that maybe isn't ideal for you. Like, maybe he's not on the line you want him to be on, which a lot of parents go through. Maybe he's not on power play. Maybe there's things that are happening there. Like, what is your message from your perspective when something like that happens?
Well, I honestly, the way I think of it now is, before the season starts, you go to a tryout, and go to the Vernon Minor Hockey or Kelowna Minor Hockey. You go to tryout. You go try out for major. You've agreed with your son, your wife, and you've agreed this is where we're going to go try out. And once you've done that, and you register and all of that, then that's your decision. Like, who the coach is going to be. Okay, he's coaching major, he's coaching minor, he's coaching AA. I'm going to that tryout. My kid's going to be on team A, B, or C. That's it. If you can't handle that, then that's the problem. It's easy to say, but I know if the coach B, is going to have him on the wrong line, well, then why you have him there. That's the hard part. It's the same thing in the NHL and NHL. Like, when a player is there and he's on a team and he's playing, well, that's, our organization have our coaches, and this is the way we operate. It's no different than minor hockey. When you sign up for minor hockey and you go there, I know it's hard. It's easier said than done, but this is what you sign up for. You get your practices per week. This is your coach. Here's your league. Here's your games, and there you go. That's it.
You try and support Austin if something does happen. I mean, during the course of a season, I'm sure something does where things aren't going right the whole time, or adversity comes up. Do you do your best to support him through it as opposed to solve it for him? Some people try and fix it, right, or smooth it over. Or, I don't know what the right way to put that is, but others kind of just get in the background and say, hey, man, I mean, this is how maybe you can do this, solve your own problem. Like, what is your approach to that?
Yeah, well, you mean if he has a game or an instance or something like that? Yeah, you go over it with him. All right, but what happened? What can we do better? What can we, maybe next time, whether it's a play with his teammate or the ref or a coach or whatever, stuff like that. But as for like play on the ice or a coach making a line change or taking him off the ice and stuff like that. That's hey, he's your coach, and I'm sure he has a reason. If you want to know, then go ask him. The only problem is it's the old, if you don't want to know the answer, don't ask the question. So that's the that's. But no, I like I said, he's 16 now. He's when you sign him up, I love the programs that he's in, and that's his hockey.
Right. No, that's great. I wouldn't mind touching on that just for a second, because I know Austin didn't go the academy route. He went the zone program, got drafted out of that. That's a big decision for hockey parents right now. Did you guys consider an academy scenario at all? And if you did, what made you decide to do what you did?
Well, we talked to some academies. More, the academies are calling, or they're looking to build their teams and stuff. We never really considered it, just because fortunately we had, if you looked at the age group in Vernon here and the surrounding area, the couple years of his Bantam, it was a great team. Like, we had the 04 age group we were very, very fortunate. Like, I think sometimes parents maybe in smaller towns where their son doesn't have the opportunity to play at a higher level, maybe it's an opportunity to go to an academy. We just felt like with our program and our team that we had, we looked at the league, the travel, we looked who we'd be playing, felt we'd be competitive. You look at the tournaments you're going to, that's a good enough opportunity. Everything just added up for us not to go to an academy. Nothing against an academy or anything like that. Just for us, it worked. 2 solid years of that was a good option for us.
No, that is good. Yeah, and I bring that up just because some people, it depends on who you talk to and their perspective, I almost feel like they're obligated to try and find an academy for their kid to do something, and I've said that a few times. I just hate when people get in that sort of mindset. Again, for me, I do believe academies, they have a ton of great things to offer, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with them per se. It's just when you feel like you have to be involved in one for anything to work out well. I think that's maybe a disservice to the whole system. Well,
that year, last year, 2 years ago, his Bantam draft year, for instance, like, you got to go to academy, go to all these showcases and stuff, and okay, that's great. But that team, I think there was 5 kids drafted off that team at the beginning of the year. I'm not sure anybody knew who they were. So that team goes there, you have a good team, you go to these tournaments. You beat a couple academy teams, you're competitive in your league, and that's huge. That's huge for, now people, like the old thing, if people, scouts in hockey or in any sport are watching, and if they hear and they know where the good players are, they'll come find you. That's I played minor hockey in Coaldale, Alberta, which was, I think we had 1,000 people in our next thing you know, on my 14th birthday, you're getting listed to the Medicine Tigers, in Coaldale, Alberta, back when you had to, you weren't even in the paper. There was no Twitter, no Instagram, you weren't advertising yourself, and you weren't on the internet. So, but people are, if there's a good team in Vernon or in Kelowna or Lumbee or a good player, they'll find you.
Yeah, they'll find you, especially in this day and age with the video footage and people watching and people are connected, and no one's going to sift through the cracks. And again, people get all hung up on the Bantam draft, and I know it's an important spot for those players in that age, and it's the biggest kind of thing that happens to them up to that point. But I mean, they're still in the WHL draft. You're still 2 years away from playing, even if you can play then, right? I mean, that's the runway is still really long in the career if you want to be a hockey player. So I stress to not get too hung up on that whole process either, right?
I think a lot of, I went through it. It's a lot of it's harder on the parents, and it's hard. Like it's a lot of years going to hockey, and you're supporting your boy, and you want the best for your player, and you're hoping, and means so much to them. They're all. It's funny that draft day. Actually, I was in Tampa his draft day, but he stayed home from school and had his computer out, and him and mom are watching, and it's a big day for them, and it should be because they work hard. It's a huge thing, and if same thing as the NHL draft. If you get drafted and it's great. You get the good opportunity. It doesn't mean you're going to make it to the NHL. It doesn't mean you're going to make it to the WHL if you go to the Western Hockey League draft, but it's an opportunity. Now, the other ones, I love seeing all the players that are playing the NHL or are on the way to the NHL that never got drafted in the Western League, and now they're signing these big contracts and they're doing well. I think that's fantastic, just to show that, hey, and then if you don't get drafted in WHL, same thing. If you find out, okay, how much hard work and you're gonna quit, or you're gonna grind it out, or you're gonna try and the next year you're gonna prove it to everybody. And I saw it this year with some players that weren't drafted in the 04 age group. Now these kids over the years, and they get listed a month into the season because they didn't get drafted, but they grew in the summer and 4 inches, and now they're bigger and stronger, and puberty and all that stuff, and boom, off they go. They get listed, they sign a contract, and so it's some good stories.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'll ask you one more question here, just from the father side, and kind of ties into what you're trying to do here with develop players for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And there's a lot of parents that maybe think that they have an idea, and again, you and I maybe think we have a better idea than others about like what it would take for our sons to get to where they want to go. When you're starting to align, whether it's practice habits or whether it's workout habits away from the rink, or what they're involved in, their focus. But then there can be some resistance, right? Because everyone has a different game plan, or they mature differently, or have a different idea of what hard work really means. How do you try and communicate that and what you've learned and what you do and what you've lived to Austin, who's now 16 years old and growing up? I mean, what does that conversation look like?
Well, I think the big thing, the first thing is the work ethic. The work ethic. If you're going to go to these, tryouts or camps or anything, or even in the off season or around the house, you got to work. You got to work, and you have all these power skating, you have all these skills camps and stuff like that. You can see the ones out there that actually really are working at it and wanting to get better. That's my first thing. And then the other thing is the same thing I told you before about development. Like, you got to have a growth mindset. You got to, when you can't do something, it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay to if you go to a tryout, and you get cut, how are you going to react from it? It's not, I'm better than that guy. I should have made this. I should have, why did he make it? No. They picked the team. We knew going in. That's what happens. Now what are we going to do? We're gonna man up. We're gonna go for it, or and I think that's the big thing. But the biggest thing I think we've talked about the whole time is having that growth mindset. You're going to go through a lot of things in life, whether it's going to the WHL or not getting drafted or getting drafted or going to a camp. And that's, I try and help them out. You go on the ice with them, you try and help them out. But at the end of the day, it's that work ethic. It's like when you're coaching and you've got the players that are always grinding and always going. We play with those guys. And
sure.
That's, ultimately until I became an NHLer, that was me. I always thought I was working hard, and then you figure it out. Now no one's going to outwork you, and that's the
right.
biggest.
So it sounds like your approach is similar to mine. Like I want it to be intrinsic with whether it's guys I work with one-on-one or it's my own kids, right? Like why they're out there doing it. They've developed just a personal standard for themselves, and they understand that it's what it's about. Like the process, getting back to we've said growth mindset a lot, like the process is as important as the result, right? So like falling in love with that process of improvement. It's tough to mandate though, and some people believe that it should be mandated, whether it comes from a coach or comes from a parent. I'm a little softer with my approach. Like I believe it should be kind of modeled and encouraged as opposed to mandated. do you feel like in your situation as a dad, how have you kind of come to that crossroads, and what was your approach with that?
Well, for you mean on the ice, like coaching and
No, I mean, I'm more off. I mean, I think on the ice, it's easy to try and, I shouldn't say easy. It's easier to draw this hard line. Like you can tell when a guy's floating, right? You can tell when a guy's working hard. And I think for me, that on-off switch is pretty obvious. But now it's like, okay, say it's my boy Hudson and he's only 10, so I'm not really using it as an example. But let's say he's 15 or 14 and he thinks he wants to be a WHL player. And maybe he is working hard on the ice, but he's not, like, he's playing video games. You know, a lot of people, he's playing video games. He's not really doing anything extra. He doesn't feel like stick handling. Like, if it comes to that point, like how do you think that should be handled from a parental perspective?
Well, and that's to say, I think, well, habits are huge, right? Like you said before, habits are huge. And I think, for first and foremost, like school. My wife's probably not worse than I, but more strict than I. Like, marks have to be top notch, or else all this isn't going to happen. Like that's a non-negotiable around here, and he's done a good job with that. The other thing is you give him a net to go shoot pucks, he's always out there shooting pucks. You set up, some stick handling, he's always down there. Like, I'm not. If I always tell him, like, if I have to tell you to do this, then it shows you how bad you want to do it. I'm not telling. I already lived my dream. Like, I'm not. My dream's over. I wish I could go back and do it again. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to try and live it through him. If you want to go out there, I'll try and help you out as much as I can along the way. But at the end of the day, you got to do it. You got to make your own bet. And a lot of people tell you, you go to the gym, you work hard, you're respectful. We always talk about respect and appreciation. You're respectful. You're working hard. You try and be the hardest worker every day. And that's a big thing for me. That's what I learned later in life. I was a hard worker because we grew up on a farm, but for being 5'9" and having to play in the NHL, I couldn't get outworked, because if I got outworked, it meant that someone who was bigger and stronger, and that was one of my biggest things.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that. There's such a simplicity to it, but it's so powerful. I mean, because I do believe in the accountability. Like, it's got to be on them, and the earlier they learn that, the better. And it can't be force fed. It can't be the parent's dream. I always say, align your dream with their dream, right? Whatever that is, and try and support them the best you can through that aspect. And yeah, I mean, for Austin to find that and to embrace that's what's cool, because then it's fun. That journey's fun. You don't want it to be not fun. I mean, what are you battling about? I mean, like, I don't want to battle with anybody about doing anything. Like, if you have a goal, then there's going to be ways that you need to align some habits and some standards around that. And I like how you touched too on the school side, because I am a believer in how you do one thing is how you do everything. Yeah. Like, it's tough to be like, 110% in this one area of your life, and then you're just a slob and lazy and everything else. I mean, it doesn't really equate. It's like, build a reputation for yourself and build this idea and this identity about yourself that's going to serve you and where you want to get to. So I love that. I love that you talk about that, and I can see why you're a part of this organization too in Tampa that's really doing some great things, and really excited to see what happens here the rest of the year with them too, as I'm sure you are. I promised you that we would cut this thing off at 90 minutes, and I think we might have already gone over. So we'll close. It just seems to happen that way all the time. But I will say, on the air before I shut off, that I think you and your wife, and like what you talk about is you're living it. I mean, it's not lip service, because Austin, for one, is like an amazing kid, and I think Everett's got an awesome prospect there. And every time I talk to him, I'm like super impressed with him. So I think whatever it is that you're serving up there, he's listening and he's keen, and it shows as a human and as a player. And I love that about what you're saying there, that it seems like you're keeping that human side really in contact in the role now with Tampa Bay.
Well, I appreciate that.
No, man, no worries. Easy to say, comes honestly. And I really appreciate your time, Stacy. It was awesome to talk with you. A lot of great insights here for some of the players and some of the parents, and some things to know, right, about being real about what it takes and how to do it, and doing the right things along the way. And the growth mindset that we've said numerous times here is something that hopefully people start listening to, right? Like, pick up the book, read it, understand it. As a parent, how do you support it? How do you say the right things to actually support it and not just make it lip service? And it becomes real. When your kids get that, man, it's a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely. No, there's no other way, for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, man, we'll cut her off. Thanks so much, and
Awesome.
we'll see you on the course sometime.
Sounds good, buds.
Well, thank you so much for being here today for episode 21 with Stacy Roest. Stacy, I thank you once again. That was amazing stuff. I think that if there was one theme today, it would have to be growth mindset. The growth mindset of an organization, the growth mindset of the people within that organization, and the growth mindset of the individual athlete as a part of that organization are all conducive to being our best as individuals and being our best as a collective. And that is something that we can teach everybody. That is something that we can learn. That is something that we can improve upon. But we have to understand the dynamics of the game that we're trying to play, which is the mindset game. The mindset game is something we have to be aware of and intentional about, just like anything else. Like the length of your stride or the quickness of your hands or the release of your shot, you need to be aware of the beliefs you're operating from, the core foundational beliefs you operating from that you navigate the world with. And that was what we were talking about today, is that this mindset element is of crucial importance for athletes and organizations. This isn't going away. It's not just the flavor of the month. This is here to stay, and it's going to grow. And if you want to have an advantage in anything, whether it be business and life or in your own personal development, the advantage is your mind and your mindset and your approach to the experiences around you. And Stacy really did a great job of speaking about that from his perspective, and you were able to get some of my perspective there as well. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I believe mindset is everything. I believe it is the greatest differentiator. And for those of you who want to know more about that, you can definitely check out my website, www.upmyhockey.com, for some of my feelings on there and some of the services that I provide. So once again, thank you for listening. If you are a hockey parent, I should also say that Up My Hockey Facebook group, it's a parent group, a private parent group where we talk about stuff like this. I also bring in exclusive interviews inside that group specifically for the parents, where they can ask questions directly to the experts like Stacy that are there, and to get their questions answered and to help them navigate their own journey with their own athletes and their own households. So you can also check me out on Facebook at Up My Hockey parent group and apply to be accepted there. Hope everyone's having a great day, and until next time, keep your head up and play hard. Cheers.